Welcome to our worship service at First Unitarian Church of Worcester, Massachusetts. Good morning to those of you worshiping with us from home, and good morning to those of you here in the sanctuary. I'm Jay Lavelle, a lay leader, and I am leading worship this morning, along with our Assistant Director of Faith Development, Abigail Hannaford Riccardi, our Interim Director of Music, Allegra Martin, our broadcast technician, Eugene Rossi. Our head usher is Karen Riley. Our special musical guest today is Sten Gustafson, and Steve Knox will be our guest reader. Here at First Unitarian Church, we strive in loving fellowship to honor the sacred, connect with each other, and serve justice. We are a welcoming congregation. Whatever your age, race, class, nationality, sexual orientation, or gender identity, we are delighted to have you with us this morning. We are worshiping as one congregation in many places. We have people here in the sanctuary and people joining us online. If you're here in the sanctuary, feel free to participate in all the unison prayers and readings and sing the hymns. If you're at home, the words to the hymns will appear on your screen so you can join in as well. There will be a social hour in the church parlor after the service. If you're online, you can like this video and add a comment in the space below the video to help others find us. Please subscribe to our channel and click on the little bell to find more of our content. We want to hear from you. You can stay connected to the church through our website, firstunitarian.com, our Facebook page, and our newsletter. The newsletter is the best way to stay in touch and join our other programs. If you would like to receive our e-newsletter, please go to firstunitarian.com and click subscribe to our newsletter at the bottom of any page. We have an announcement from Liz Gustafson, who is not here, so Chris Johnson is filling in. Chris? Is Chris here? Okay, wave so people know who you are. The announcement is, can you volunteer for an evening or overnight shift at the IHN Family Shelter? Your time will help support families experiencing homelessness in our community. Volunteering is easy and fun. To sign up or learn more, see Chris Johnson after the service. Okay, we're all set, and we can do church. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Bill Ruggiero is lighting our chalice this morning.
Okay. Sit.
In the spirit of love,
we light this chalice.
I ask all of you to stand as you are able for the covenant of this church. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all.
Good morning. So, this weekend, as you know, most of our families are at Ferry Beach. So most of the young ones, so there's a couple. Oh. So some of the young ones are here, but most are at Ferry Beach, and along with our minister, Reverend Sarah, and our new Director of Faith Development, Samantha Namath. As Jay announced, I'm Steve Knox, and it's my pleasure this morning to work with Abby. It's going to be great to tell our Time for All Ages story. It is What Was I Scared Of? And it's a Dr. Seuss poem, or Dr. Seuss. Well, I was walking in the night, and I saw nothing scary, for I've never been afraid of anything. Well, not very. Then I was deep in the woods when suddenly I spied them. I saw a pair of pale green pants with nobody inside them. Now, I wasn't scared, but yet I stopped. What could those pants be there for? What could a pair of pants at night be standing in the air for? And then they moved. Those empty pants. They kind of started jumping. And then my heart, I must admit, it kind of started thumping. So I got out. I got out fast as I could go, sir. I wasn't scared. But pants like that, I did not care for, no, sir. Now after that, about a week went by, and then one dark night in Greenwich, I had to do an errand there and fetch some Greenwich spinach. Well, I had fetched the spinach, and I was starting back through town when those pants raced around a corner. They almost knocked me down. I lost my Greenwich spinach, but I didn't even care. I ran for home. Believe me, that time I really had a scare. Now, bicycles were never made for pale green pants to ride them, especially spooky pale green pants with nobody inside them. Now, the next night, I went fishing for doubt trout on Rover River. And then those pants came rowing out toward me, and I started to shiver. And by now I was so frightened, I tell you, I screamed. I rowed away, and I lost my hook, the line, the bait. I ran, and I found a brickle bush, and I hid myself away. And I got prickles in my britches. But I stayed there anyway. I stayed all night, and the next night too. And I'd still be there, no doubt. But I did have another errand, so the next night I went out to do my errand. I had to pick a peck of snide in a dark and gloomy snide field. It was almost 9 miles wide. And I said to myself, I do not fear those pants with nobody inside them. I do not fear those pants with nobody inside them. I said it, and I said those words. But I lied. Then I reached inside a snide bush, and the next thing I knew, I felt my hand touch someone. And I'll bet you know who. And there I was, caught in the snide. And in that dreadful place, those spooky, empty pants and I were standing face to face. Oh, I yelled for help. I screamed. I shrieked. I howled. I yelled. I cried, oh, please, somebody please save me from these pale green pants with nobody inside. And then a very strange thing happened. Those pants, they began to cry. Those pants began to tremble. They were just as scared as I. I never heard such whimpering. And I began to see that I was just as strange to them as they were to me. So I put my arm around their waist. I sat right down beside them. I calmed them down, those poor empty pants with nobody inside them. Well, now we meet quite often, those empty pants and we never shake or tremble. We both smile and say, "Hi." Regular faith development classes begin next week, so any children and youth that would like to, and older folks like myself who would like to, you're invited to join Abby. Follow her downstairs to the Landers room for some further exploration of today's story. Thank you.
Our common prayer today is by the German minister and theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It is printed on the insert in your order of service, and it should also appear on the screen. We will read this in unison. O God, early in the morning I cry to you. Help me to pray and to concentrate my thoughts on you. I cannot do this alone. In me there is darkness, but with you there is light. I am lonely, and you do not need me. I am feeble in heart, but with you there is help. I am restless, but with you there is patience. I do not understand your ways, but you know your way for me. In our sacred time together, we share the joys and sorrows of our church with one another. Lorna Pezzanelli lovingly lights a candle for her brother Jack, who is in hospice care. May her continued prayers comfort him at this time. We hold Lorna, Jack, and their family in our hearts at this difficult time. We have a candle of thanks lit for Scott Heyman's dedication to keeping the church lawn mowed. There are 1,000 little tasks that are required for a church to flourish, and mowing the lawn is one of them, and is just as valuable as anything else. And Mary Rose O'Neill lights a candle that one of her senior students is fighting for her life with a mysterious illness at Children's Hospital. We again hold Mary Rose and her student in our hearts at this time. Please continue your own thoughts and prayers in silence. Prayer and meditation, we reach out to one another in compassion as we say together the prayer of Jesus. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Our ministries at First Unitarian Church continue to thrive because of your support. In the last week, the following occurred. A successful book sale with support from many volunteers raised about $1,000 to support our ministries. The Welcome Committee sent open house invitations to 800 households around the church, inviting them to next Sunday's service. And the Buildings and Grounds Committee is exploring how to purchase the church's electricity from a solar array. To support all that we do, sorry, the number isn't here. Okay, the texting number, is that in our, all right, I am sorry, I do not have that here. You can also go to firstunitarian.com and click Give Online at the top of any page. You can also scan the UR code that is in the order of service, which will go directly to our PayPal page. I invite your generous contributions for the good work of First Unitarian Church.
You have asked me why the days fly by so quickly, and why each one feels no different from the last. And you say that you are fearful for the future, and you have grown suspicious of the past. And you wonder if the dreams we shared together have abandoned us or we abandoned them. And you cast about and try to find new meaning so that we can feel that closeness once again. Carry on, my sweet survivor, carry on, my lonely friend. Don't give up on the dream, and don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor, though you know that something's wrong. For everything that matters, carry on.
You remember when you felt each person mattered, that we all had to care or all was lost. But now you see believers turn to cynics, and you wonder, was the struggle worth the cost? And you see someone too young to know the difference, and the veil of isolation in their eyes, and in Don't give up on the dream, and don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor, though you know that something's gone. For everything that matters, carry on. Carry on, my sweet survivor. Carry on, my lonely friend. Don't give up on the dream, and don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor, though you carried it so long. So it may come again. Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Our first reading is from the book of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 to 31. Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After he sent them away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already far from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus spoke up at once. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "command me to come to you on the water." "Come," said Jesus. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and took hold of Peter. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Our second hymn is number 17 in the gray book, "Every Night and Every Morn." Please stand as you are able. Our second reading is a short poem by America's greatest writer, Emily Dickinson. While we were fearing it, it came, but came with less of fear, because that fearing it so long had almost made it fair. There is a fitting, a dismay, a fitting, a despair. 'Tis harder knowing it is due than knowing it is here. The trying on the utmost, the morning it is new, is terribler than wearing it a whole existence through. Good morning again. First, I want to thank Reverend Sarah for asking me to preach today. I am honored and humbled. I am also glad she asked me to do it now, since most of my topics today will be covered in the new Taylor Swift album next month. And I am sure Taylor will present them with more clarity and artistry than I will, and she will look a whole lot better doing it too. Those of you who know me know that if I love anything, it is air conditioning. My entire life, the heat and humidity of the summer has brought sunburn, heat exhaustion, and for a number of years, migraines. As soon as I was able, I bought an air conditioner. Now I have 2 ACs, their capacity bounded only by the limits of my electrical service. The only problem with this is that the ACs are bulky and heavy, and installing them in late spring and removing them in early autumn requires at least 2 people. For years, a neighbor helped me with this, and we were able to get the task done in an hour if we were lucky. The house I live in was built in 1840, and it has, to use a generous term, settled over the years. And few, if any, of the windows are square. Early this year, my neighbor mentioned they didn't feel comfortable lifting the ACs anymore. I thought, okay, I'll put a request into Caring Circles here at church. A nice, simply defined, short-duration task. Then the climate intervened. I was looking at the Carrot weather app on my iPhone on a Tuesday in May and saw there was going to be at least 95 degrees over the weekend. I began to quietly panic. I called my neighbor and explained my situation and asked, could they help one last time? They said they would if they weren't already committed all week and Saturday morning too. My panic increased. They said they'd check and see if they could find someone else. Friday, my neighbor called and said that 2 of my other neighbors, Roger and Sharon, who lived down the street, would be there Saturday morning. My panic did not decrease, but instead changed course to a more free-floating despair. Strange people coming into my sanctuary with the double-locked doors, strange people who would criticize my decor, my choices, my very being. This, of course, was not true. I knew Roger and Sharon. Crown Hill is a close-knit neighborhood. In fact, I had first met Sharon 25 years ago when we were both living different lives. No, this was all in my head. Saturday morning, after an uneasy sleep, the doorbell rang. As much as I love air conditioning, I hate doorbells and all other loud, harsh, sudden sounds. In a complete panic, I ran down the stairs, and there were the 2 of them, Sharon grinning and saying, "We're here," and Roger, one hand out, the other holding a bag of tools. They came upstairs, said some very sweet things about my cat, assessed the situation, and moved 1 AC into place. Roger took a screw gun out of his bag and had the AC affixed in my crooked window in 30 seconds. They repeated this with the other AC, said some more nice things about my cat, and left. It was less than a half hour since they had arrived. I sat there replaying the week's events as both AC's word and cold air filled my house. The large part of my mind that had been filled with despair and anxiety was suddenly empty and full of light. My cat looked at me for a few seconds and then curled up and went to sleep. Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest who runs a retreat center in New Mexico and who is a well-known author and lecturer, writes, "All I could give back, and all God wants from any of us, is to humbly and proudly return the product we have been given, which is ourselves. If I'm to believe both the saints and the mystics, the finished product is more valuable to God than it is seemingly to us. True religion is always a deep intuition that we are already participating in something very good, in spite of all our best efforts to deny it or avoid it." Father Rohr continues, "Modern religion is not something to join. It is something to recognize, suffer, and enjoy as a participant. We are already in the eternal flow that Christians would call the divine life." On the surface, this is appealing to an engineer. There is a straight line of life, the eternal flow, a vector with an arrow on one end so we know which direction we're going in. None of this fuzzy circle of life stuff. Now the question becomes, where do we find the true self? And how do we know what has been given to us so we know what to give back? Father Rohr says that our life is in two parts. The first, where we discover our script, and the second, where we own it. And on that Saturday in May, I was still very much in the first part, deep in it. The first part of life is about surviving and establishing. When those two things are assured, we begin to wonder about our inner task. This wondering eventually leads us to the second half of life. The wondering will lead us to integrity, to purification, to honesty. We will be led by grace to the city of God, becoming what are called the chosen, the fated, the destined. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Now, some of you might be thinking this journey idea is trivial. Most contemporary life is designed just to support activities. Get an education, then a job, then a house, get married, have a family, buy a vacation home. As the Trappist monk Thomas Merton wrote, we spend our lives climbing a ladder, and when we finally get to the top, we notice it is leaning against the wrong wall. Most of us suspect that all is not working the way it should, and we're not wrong. We are plagued with psychic aches and pains that come and go. The first part of life is about surviving and establishing. I was definitely spending way more time surviving. No establishments of house, marriage, and summer home for me. It did not feel like Father Rohr's eternal flow, nor did I think I was participating in something very good. Gradually, oh so gradually, I realized that my emphasis on survival was important and essential, and that attempting to go beyond that to have a typical life was beyond my capacity. I settled in with my disparate woes, which I collected under the general term fear. I began the long process of what a New Ager would call personal growth. The long process that I hoped would lead not so much to cure as to healing and wholeness. I would like to think that one of the things I learned was from Roger and Sharon, and that is to find people that have the right mindset and the right tools. Other things I have learned include the following. 1, Barbara Merritt, who, for the benefit of our YouTube audience, was a previous minister of this church, once told me that if I meditated daily for 1 year, I would get 2 seconds of clarity and insight. Those seconds added up. Also, this is an important life lesson. Meditation is active, regardless of what you might think. Please remember that it is easier to act your way into thinking than think your way into acting. 2, George Orwell, who was not a minister of this church, wrote that the hardest thing to do is see what is in front of your nose. I would say that is the second hardest. The hardest to see whatever is the hardest is to see whatever is there in the light of truth. And Lobsang Futsak, a Tibetan monk who gave teachings here 15 years ago, once told us to spend 1 day a month just saying thank you to whatever happened to us. Good, bad, or neutral, just say thank you. Now, if you need some advice that is more concrete, get an introductory 12-step book, and with any sentence that begins, "I am powerless over," just cross out the remainder of the sentence and write in life. But then there's still fear, which follows us like a shadow. In the middle of Hamlet, King Claudius sends 2 of Hamlet's fellow students to spy on him, to try and discern what is going on with the prince. They are very inadequate for the job, barely more than pretentious comic relief as Hamlet pours out his soul. At one point, Hamlet tells them, "I could be bounded up in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams." And they have no idea what he is talking about. They are caught in the material world, and without knowing it, are haunted by fear as much as Hamlet is, as much as I was. Likewise, throughout the New Testament, the disciples seem to have no idea what Jesus is talking about. You would think being with them every day, listening to all the teachings, to say nothing of chats while walking or over meals, that they'd be slightly enlightened. But no, they disappoint Jesus over and over again, who, like some sitcom character, is given the chance to say yet again his catchphrase, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" The Sufi master Hazrat Inayat Khan wrote, "One who is conscious of matter alone is material. One who becomes conscious of spirit becomes spiritual. He who thinks, 'I am my body,' and sees no further is material. He may as well say, 'I am my coat.' And when the coat is ragged, he may say, 'I am poor.' And when it is worn out, he may say, 'I am dead.' The one who is conscious of the spirit, to him his body is a coat, and as by taking off one's coat, what does not die, so even by the death of this body, the spirit-realized soul does not die." I have been there, confusing myself with the coat I was wearing, confusing myself with what I did, where I did it, and who I did it with. Confusing my life with what I read in books, what I saw in movies, or on TV. Confusing myself with the unerasable, carved in stone memories of every embarrassing moment in my life. Thomas Merton wrote, "Now, one of the things we must cast out first of all is fear. Fear narrows the little entrance of our heart. It shrinks up our capacity to love. It freezes up the power to give ourselves. We shrink further and further into the nutshell as we fear. We freeze in place. We cannot give, we cannot receive. And those are equal. The axiom, it is better to give than to receive, is wrong. If I give, then you receive. And if you give, then I receive. It is an equal zero-sum situation, beneficial to all. And that leads to a higher level theorem based on the Roger and Sharon teaching. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Let me say that again. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. You are always in need of a teacher, and there is always a student waiting for you. One last story to try and bring this all together. Chogyam Trungpa was a famous Tibetan teacher. He was the 11th Trungpa Tulku, a reincarnation of a major teacher from 600 years ago, as well as a scholar, a translator, and a poet. Among his accomplishments were establishing schools in Vermont and Colorado. One of his students is Sven Shodron, the well-known writer. One day he went to speak before the students. "My brothers and sisters," he began, "I have some bad news and some good news. The bad news is that we are falling through the air. You, me, all of us. There is nothing to grab a hold of, no parachutes. We are just falling through the air." He then paused for dramatic effect. The good news is, there is no ground. Now sit with that for a minute, maybe two. What if the source of fear, the scary rush of air around us indicating some oncoming disaster, isn't true? That the slight gasp in our throats isn't all the breath within us being sucked out by a demon? That the shakiness in our legs is just a misfiring neuron? And that we are only dead when we are dead, and thus supremely alive otherwise? Sit with that. Sit with the idea of a loving God who gives us no reason to fear, and who gives us our daily bread. Sit with the idea of Simone de Beauvoir on the cover of the Order of Service, that to exist is to leap into life. Sit with the idea that the scary flow of air is a spring breeze, or maybe the eternal grace of the Holy Spirit, or maybe just some air conditioning on a hot day. Sit with, if nothing else, the idea that there is no ground to worry about. And as you speed through life, falling without end, wave to your neighbor as they pass and shout, "Wonderful day, isn't it?" Amen. Our third hymn is number 298 in the gray, "Wake Now My Senses," and we'll do the first three verses. My sisters and brothers, our benediction today is from St. Edith Stein, a prolific writer, Carmelite nun, and martyr. O my God, fill my soul with holy joy, courage, and strength to serve you. Enkindle your love in me, and then walk with me along the next stretch of road before me. I do not see very far ahead, but when I have arrived where the horizon now closes down, a new prospect will open before me, and I shall meet it with peace. Please be seated for the postlude.